If you haven't had a period in a year, then this episode is going to be really important for you because I'm going to talk through the three most important things to have in place in order to get your periods to come back into regular rhythm. Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am super excited to be here with you. I am your host, Dr. Angela Potter. I am the creator of the PCOS Fertility Health Protocol, and I'm also a speaker. I have shared the stage with leaders from companies like Google, Microsoft, Headspace, and I am just overjoyed to be here with you. And I talk to women day in and day out who have PCOS, and it's really common for them to say to me, "Hey, doc, I haven't had a period in a year. And before that, I was on a few medicated cycles and I would only bleed on those cycles." Or they'll say, "Hey, I get 60-day cycles or 80-day cycles, or I've only had 2 periods this last year." And this is really common because of the hormone imbalance that happens with PCOS. And there is a way for you to bring your body back into rhythm, bring your hormones back into balance to get them to a place where you're having regular periods. That's where your body wants to be. That's its natural state, is to be having that hormonal shift happening throughout the month that is having you ovulate and then bleeding once a month. And it is a possibility. You just need the tools to figure out what's keeping you from having that regular period, and then a plan that addresses what's keeping you from having a regular period that brings you back into regular rhythm. And now that's, simplified down to the very basics, but we're going to talk about the top 3 things you need to have in place in order for that to happen. And before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge you for being here, for showing up, because there are so many different podcasts out there, but you chose to listen to this one. And you're here because you want to know what your body needs to overcome this PCOS, to have the best chance at getting pregnant as you possibly can. And that's why I am excited to show up here with you every single week to give you step-by-step little bits and pieces of how to move forward to that so that you can just open up the best chances that you can have at getting pregnant. All right, so if you haven't had a period in a year and you are wanting regular periods, what can you do? What does your body need in order to get to that place? And, I talk to so many women on a daily basis who have PCOS, and it's really common for me to hear, of course, I really want to get pregnant. I want to have my baby, but I also just want my periods to be regular, and I want to get positive ovulation tests because that's a sign showing me that my body is moving in the right direction and it's starting to work as it's supposed to. And so perhaps that's going on in your head as well, that, of course, the end goal is getting pregnant, but, how are you going to get pregnant if you have no periods? Even if you are on fertility medications, like how is that going to overcome everything that's going on that's keeping you from getting pregnant? And that's a good question to have, because those fertility medications, they can be really important in certain parts of the fertility journey, but 9 times out of 10, they are being used too early on in the process. Because if you try one of those fertility medications without first balancing out your hormones, optimizing your fertility health, overcoming nutrient deficiencies that are specific to egg quality, hormone balance, to overcoming PCOS, then you're basically throwing spaghetti at the wall to see if anything will work. But once you're able to then optimize these different aspects of your fertility health, maybe you need just a little boost with a round of letrozole in order for you then to push that egg out. But you've got to do that work first in order to have the best chance at getting pregnant naturally or having those fertility medications work. So These are the 3 steps that you need to have in place in order to get those regular periods back. And again, I see this all the time. Like, this is what I work on with my patients as we're working towards fertility. It's like, first, we've got to get the periods back into regular rhythm. And it's really exciting when I get, either a meeting at a new session or my patients give me a call and they're like, oh, guess what? I had a positive ovulation test this week. Or they say, this is my second cycle of a 28-day cycle. It's really, really uplifting. Okay, so the first thing that you need in order to get your cycles back into regular rhythm is a doctor who is willing to look at your hormones. Okay, you've got to get some testing done in order to see what are your hormones doing. What is keeping you from having that regular period? And the menstrual cycle, right? The classic menstrual cycle is 28 days. And there's this beautiful harmony of hormones happening every day of the cycle that's creating that's supporting ovulation. And then if pregnancy doesn't happen, then creating that bleed to happen. And it's just the hormones going up and down in your brain, talking to your ovaries, and all the hormones in the body talking to each other that creates that monthly rhythm. And so is there a doctor who's looking at your hormone levels to see what's off balance? Because you can't get anywhere if you don't know where you're starting from. All right? Are you getting testosterone levels tested? Is somebody looking at your estrogen and progesterone levels? How about your LH and your FSH? Now, let's break those down just a little bit. Testosterone. Testosterone is part of the PCOS diagnosis, okay? And if it's elevated in somebody's body like you and me with female organs, it shuts down ovulation, okay? We need a little bit of testosterone, but when it rises too much, which is really common with PCOS, again, part of the diagnosis, then it shuts down ovulation. And so is somebody saying, hey, look at these testosterone levels? So that's first off, because a lot of doctors are just brushing off symptoms and just saying, oh, well, you can't get pregnant, so you have PCOS, but they're not taking that next level of doing this really important testing. And then there's estrogen and progesterone. So again, there's a variety of hormones that create the menstrual cycle. But estrogen and progesterone are the dominant hormones. And estrogen is highest in the first half of the cycle. Progesterone is highest in the second half of the cycle after ovulation happens. Now, if you haven't had a period in a year, we know that you have low progesterone levels. Okay, you don't necessarily need to get your progesterone levels tested. It can be really helpful just so you can see that number. But then you need to see what estrogen is doing and how that is in ratio to progesterone. Is it really elevated? Are you having trouble getting estrogen out of the body? And so your body is just holding on to excess estrogen. Do you have low levels of estrogen and you actually need them to rise? And you've got to figure out how to get that estrogen raised and that progesterone raised. Okay. But does somebody have that clear picture for you? Are they looking at LH and FSH? Those are the hormones coming from your brain that are talking to your ovary to get that menstrual cycle to happen. Okay. LH is the hormone that the most all at-home ovulation predictor kits are looking for to see if it's rising in order to then cause ovulation to happen. And it's really common in PCOS for LH and FSH to be really elevated, for that ratio of them to be out of balance. And is somebody helping you and looking at those levels for you? Thyroid hormones are really important when it comes to fertility. And many fertility doctors are recognizing that and running these tests, but not everyone. And we know that the thyroid hormone needs to be in this optimal level in order for fertility to be at its best. And not only TSH hormone, that main thyroid hormone, but also thyroid antibodies. If those antibodies are elevated, you've got inflammation happening in the body, which is affecting ovulation, affecting implantation that you don't want. So that's the first step, is to have a doctor who's looking at these types of tests for you. So then what's the second thing that you need? Well, then you need a plan to get these all balanced, because these hormones are working all together in order for you to get that regular period once a month and to have, that ideal hormone balance throughout the month. So now that you have that information of what's going on in the body, well, then what's the plan to move forward in order to get those hormones into optimal balance, right? You need a testosterone lowering plan if that's elevated. And here's another tip about testosterone, is that it might be normal if you just get a regular blood test looking at just your blood levels of testosterone, because looking at that snapshot is one piece of the picture. If you have normal levels of testosterone and yet you still get those classic testosterone symptoms like acne, hair growth, like extra hair growth on your chin or your back, easy weight gain, those are the classic testosterone signs, and yet your blood levels are normal, well, then you need someone to be able to help you figure out, well, is your testosterone metabolizing into the more potent pathway that's creating those symptoms, to be able to recognize that and then create a plan that either lowers testosterone or moves it out of that potent pathway, right? Do you have a plan that boosts that progesterone? Because progesterone is important for ovulation, and it's also really important for once you have a baby, because if somehow you do get pregnant and you have low progesterone, your body won't have enough progesterone in order to keep that pregnancy going. And so you need a plan to raise that progesterone. And then you need a plan to balance out your estrogen levels. Okay. If you have lots and lots of estrogen, what's happening to create that estrogen? Is it that your liver is backed up and you're not able to package up excess estrogen and get it out of the body? Do you have gut issues that are keeping you from getting that estrogen out of the body? Are you being exposed to what we call xenoestrogens, synthetic estrogens that are really quite common in our world, that are then just keeping in your body and keeping you at this really high level of estrogens? Or do you have low estrogen? And how can you bump that up? Okay, so the first thing you need is to look at what your hormones are doing, to see what is keeping you in the way of having a regular period. And the second thing you need is a plan to get those back into balance. Okay. I use my cycle balancing plan and my testosterone lowering plan for people who have elevated testosterone. I'm always getting people on the cycle balancing protocol. And that's really important, because what I have developed is a plan to optimize those hormone levels. Okay. Many doctors are recommending birth control pills in order to regulate hormones for PCOS. And birth control has its place, but fertility is not one of them. It is really the epitome of what a Band-Aid approach is, because you take the birth control pills and everything just looks great from the outside, right? You get that monthly bleed and everything must be normal because of that. But what birth control pills are doing is they're actually just shutting down your body's own production of hormones and just saying, okay, no, the pill have got this covered. Don't worry about it. And it shuts down the brain and the ovaries, what they're doing with their hormones throughout the month. And so it looks really nice, but only on the surface. Underneath the surface, the opposite of what you want is happening. And so once getting off of those birth control pills, for many, there's even more PCOS symptoms. It's hard for periods to come back. I would invite you to listen to last week's episode about post-pill PCOS if you want to know more about that. But just watch out that if you do have all that information with your hormones and then you're ready for that plan to help you get into regular rhythm, birth control pills are not actually supporting your body to come back into that regular rhythm. Okay. And that's why I work with women with my cycle balancing protocol. And so then the third thing you need is somebody to then take that next step to understand, okay, do you have some nutrient deficiencies that are keeping you from having the high quality eggs that you need? And that's what's keeping you from ovulating? How about your insulin levels? Are those too high? Are those keeping you from ovulating? I talked with someone pretty recently who has been working with a fertility doctor and her PCP for 2 years. And she has never been told that blood sugar affects fertility, never done that testing or had that conversation with either doctor about the importance of that. And then somebody else mentioned to her, like, hey, has anyone talked to you about this? And she said, no. And then she asked for the testing, and turns out her glucose levels are through the roof. And she's like really frustrated because she spent 2 years working with a specialist and her regular doctor about fertility, and nobody had mentioned that. Okay. So this is key. Are you working with a doctor who's helping you figure out what are these other elements to your health that are keeping you from ovulating? Getting egg quality, those nutrients and antioxidants on board so that your eggs are ready to ovulate on that monthly cycle. Because if you haven't had a period in a year, you most likely aren't ovulating. You could be, but you most likely aren't. And then you're at this place where your eggs are not doing what they're supposed to be. And you need a doctor who is willing to say, let's figure this out. Not somebody who's going to say, well, I can only give you metformin until you lose weight. Or I'm willing to do up to 35 rounds of letrozole, but that's the only thing that we can do for you. Okay, that is dismissive fertility advice that is going to keep you further and further from your goals of having a baby. You need somebody who is going to give you that direct guidance to say, this is how to improve your egg quality. Oh, your insulin levels. Oh, we need to figure out your PCOS types. Okay, well, you've got a family history of autoimmune conditions. We've got to look into that and make sure that inflammation is not affecting your implantation and your ovulation. And it's really cool once you have these 3 things in place to see regular periods show up. And I'll be totally honest with you, it is on an individualized basis how your body reacts. Some women, once they start on myo-inositol, within a few weeks, they're having regular periods. For others, then they get the cycle balancing protocol on board. And then that's when they start seeing ovulation, positive ovulation tests, and their periods regulate. And for others, it takes more months further forward from that. And more just figuring out, okay, what is it that's keeping your body from getting pregnant? But your body always wants to get back to that place. It's just about figuring out what is happening, then addressing that. That's the key. Think through the care that you're getting from your doctor right now. Are you getting this level of support and a plan and research into your health? Are you getting that? If not, it's time to take that next step to find somebody who is willing to do that for you. Join me right back here next Wednesday. And if you are loving this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give me a positive review. I thank you so much for that, for your support, and it really helps keep this podcast going. Just a reminder for you, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and it shouldn't replace the medical advice that you are getting from your doctor. If you are not getting the level of care that you want from them for your PCOS and your fertility, you are welcome to book a PCOS fertility breakthrough session with myself, and I will talk with you about your story and see how I can help. As we leave here today, if nobody has told you this yet, I want to tell you that I believe in you and I believe in your ability to increase your chances of getting pregnant and just have the best chances that you can at getting pregnant with PCOS. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you next Wednesday.